Welcome back, A-Pushers. It's another episode of Mr. B History. This time, the 1920s, aka the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age. Conveniently, they go from 1920 to 1929. We're starting off with this poem, excellent poem. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But my foes, and my friends, it gives a lovely light. Wow. Just wow. Let's get started. The 1920s were dominated by Republican presidents. 3 Republicans, as a matter of fact. The famous Warren G. Harding, the ever-cool Calvin Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. Warren G. Harding starts us off in the 1920s, promising a, quote, return to normalcy after the chaos of World War I and increasing government introduction in World War I and also the Progressive Era. He was unclear on every issue, but he was handsome and popular, and that's enough. And also from Ohio. He promised a return to normal. He wins in a landslide. Progressivism and internationalism are dead. For now. Business doctrine, it's a return of laissez-faire, kind of. You can never go back. You try to go back, but you can never go back. It's limited government regulation to stabilize business. The government is clearly pro-business. Warren G. Harding brings some of his friends from Ohio to run the government. These become known as the Ohio Gang. That's a fun fact. He reduces the income tax, increases the tariff, establishes the Bureau of the Budget, pardons Eugene V. Debs, got out of jail, and then scandals and death. Into his about 3 years into things, he has a Teapot Dome scandal where his Secretary of Interior took bribes from an oil company, and then his Attorney General was bribed also. He may have lied under oath protecting these 2 people. Their scandal was exposed in 1923. And then, while on a tour of the West, Warren G. Harding dies suddenly and mysteriously while traveling. Silent Cow, who was the vice president, becomes president because, the president's dead. And he's Silent Cow. He doesn't say a lot, except some famous thing that he does say is, the business of America is business. Which is like saying it is what it is. The election of 1924. So in 1924, there's a presidential election. Calvin Coolidge runs for president with this killer slogan, keep cool with Coolidge. Vetoes in inaction. Calvin Coolidge had a firm belief in limited government. He was a big believer in laissez-faire government. He cut government spending to the bare bones, balanced the budget, vetoed any spending bill, and did a whole lot of nothing, while being very quiet about it. Hoover Smith in the election, that's it. That's all it is for Calvin Coolidge. Hoover Smith in the election of 1928. Herbert Hoover is the Republican who runs against Al Smith, the Catholic, who opposed prohibition. Hoover promises to continue laissez-faire policies of Coolidge and wins in a landslide. In a rock avalanche. Mixed economic development. The 1920s are a period of business prosperity or economic good times. Unemployment is below 4%. The standard of living improves for everybody, but up to 40% of the population still lives in poverty. So you have a significant improvement in everyone's life, but there's still 40% in poverty. Causes of business prosperity. Increased productivity. Henry Ford's moving assembly line and other manufacturing innovations means that factories can make things faster and therefore cheaper and more stuff. Energy technology. The widespread use of oil and gasoline and electricity for power replaces steam and water in factories. Government policies. Cut corporate taxes, stop enforcing antitrust laws. It's a return to laissez-faire. And also the new Federal Reserve Board lowers the interest rates, making it cheap to borrow money. All these things are very, very pro-business and fuel the roaring economy. Speaking of fueling the roaring economy, it's also a consumer economy. All that propaganda from World War I is now turned to advertising, and they're using the same techniques to convince people to buy stuff. People buying new electronic appliances like washing machines and vacuums. Everyone gets an automobile, or almost every family has an automobile. You have to have one, especially a cheap, reliable Model T from Henry Ford. Chain stores become very popular, and it's cheap credit, which means installment plans and monthly payments. So you don't even have to have the money. You can just borrow it and buy all the cool things that you want. Probably the thing that has the invention of the 1920s that has the biggest impact, besides also the radio, which was also invented in the 1920s, was the automobile. It changes society. Cars replace railroads as the key promoter of economic growth. It influences other industries such as gasoline, rubber, highway construction, gas stations, and the like. It has social impacts on how people shop, what people do for fun, like joy driving, and commuting to work, dating, going out on a date in your car, traffic jams, and accidents. So not all good things. Farm and labor problems. Farmers benefited from World War I, but after the war were in debt. Overproduction, chemical fertilizers, and tractors keep the prices low. The union movement went backwards. This was a result of the open shops, which keeps jobs open for non-union workers, and many of the strikes failed. Welfare capitalism, the labor unions were not getting supported by the government at all. And factory owners started turning to things called welfare capitalism, which is voluntary, offering their employees improved benefits and working conditions or better pay, so that you wouldn't need a labor union to negotiate if you're getting these things already. Fun fact, Henry Ford paid his factory workers $5 a day, and they only had to work a 5-day work week. That's Monday through Friday, with a real weekend. Students, I don't know if you're good at math, but 5 times 5 is 25. So people who worked at Henry Ford's plant made $25 a week. Compare this to sweatshop girl who was making $4, like $5, $4 or $5 a week compared to $25 a week. And you can see that this indeed was way above average. So people really wanted to work for Henry Ford. And they could also afford his car, which was pretty amazing. And that brings us to the end. That was a very short first half of our chapter. Next time we will finish up with the social issues of the 1920s. I hope you really appreciate our videos. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and until next time, A-Pushers. That was our special guest, the cat. Have a great evening, and I hope you learned a lot.